So, welcome to the course on algorithm analysis. And this course is based on the book by Corman on algorithm analysis, a very good book used and employed in various universities and colleges. So, first, we'll take introduction. The PPT source is from this, and let us start. Few things which we are going to be seeing a lot, that is induction and asymptotic notation that we are going to see. So this course, actually the purpose of the course is introduction to design and analysis of algorithm. The most important part in computer science is designing an analysis of algorithm, not only making or writing a program, but before that, trying to analyze the algorithm, whether it is good or bad, expensive, inexpensive, efficient, inefficient. This is what we are going to cover. And this is not a lab or a programming course. This is actually about algorithms and not at all a math course. And as I suggested, the introduction to algorithm, Corman and Lizerson, Rivest and Steam. And this is the second edition. This is based on the second edition of Corman. And it is not, the difference is not much between third and second version of the textbook. So this is a very good and excellent reference you should have if you're a computer science student. So what is induction? Induction we'll be using a lot. That is why we need to introduce in the introductory session. Just suppose that you have a function, say s, and this is a function of k, a function s, function of k is a variable, and this is true for fixed constant k. If you consider k, that means if you are inserting any value, like say for k equal to 0, and if this function sk is true for k equal to 0, if you put or place in that function the value of k as 0, then if it is constant, then if Sn means any number n, if placed for k, if it implies, if it gives rise to Sn plus 1, means if we just use this Sn and can say for every Sn, this Sn plus 1 also holds for all n which is greater than or equal to k, which we have already seen, then we say if Sn is true for Sn plus 1 and Sn plus 1 is true for Sn plus 1 is giving rise to Sn plus 2. So once x is true, x plus 1 is also true, then we can say that this Sn is true for all n which is greater than or equal to k. We are talking about this function. This is a simple introduction to induction technique. Then how to prove it means induction is already existing and we prove it by some function by induction. That means we claim that Sn is true for all this n is greater than or equal to k, and the basis is we show formula is true for n equal to k. And we have always a hypothesis before we start, means we assume that it is true for any arbitrary n. You put any n and it is true. And the step is we need to show the formula is true for n plus 1. So taking n as or Sn as input, we have to show that it is true for Sn plus 1 also. This is how we prove any function by employing induction. And you might be lost here, but let us try with an example. So we have to prove that 1 plus 2 plus 3 until n, the summation of natural numbers is equal to first n natural numbers is n into n plus 1 by 2. So what I suggested was, you have this function, this is our sk function here because already n is there. This is our Sn function, Sn. Let us put n equal to 0 here in this. What we get? 0, 0 plus 1 by 2. That is 1 by 2. And then we multiply it by 0. So what we get? We get for n equal to 0, the function becomes 0. So this is the basis. Then we present a hypothesis. This is called inductive hypothesis. And we assume 1 plus 2 plus n equal to and n plus 1 by 2. Now we have to show that if we add, this is there, this is there, these two are there. If we add n plus 1, because we assume that this is true, Sn is true. And now we want it to be true for Sn plus 1. For that what we have done? We have added n plus 1 here. So what formation we can have? We can have 1 plus 2 plus dash dash till n, means this one, and we add n plus 1 here. So we try to part it. This 1 plus 2 and n is one partition. This the added n plus 1 is another partition. But we are aware that what is this? We have already made a hypothesis that this is true, or this 1 plus 2 till n is equal to n plus 1 by 2. So this will be replaced by n plus 1 by 2. Let us replace it. This is n plus 1 by 2, and then this is, you have it here because you want it for n plus 1. Now you add it. We take n plus 1 common, or in another way we multiply these two, and we finally get this value, and this is n plus 1, then n plus 2 by 2. So if n plus 1 by 2 we assume to be true, then we actually found out that it is true n plus 1 and n plus 1 plus 1. Means n has become n plus 1, n plus 1 has become n plus 1 plus 1. This is n has become n plus 1, and this is true for this also. So by induction we say, if it is true, or our hypothesis was it is true for Sn, it is true for Sn plus 1 also. This is called Gaussian closed form, and this is how we prove it. And let us take one more example. We have to prove, we are provided with an equation that is a to the power 0 plus a to the power 1 till a to the power n. And we have to prove that this function is the addition of these value follows a function which is a to the power n plus 1 minus 1 divided by a minus 1. And a cannot be 1 because it will become 0, and this value will become anything divided by 0 is infinite, which is not defined. So we have chosen that this is true only when a is not equal to 1. So the basis is, let us as we know that the basis is always the first one. So let us place 0 here, means in this function we are just placing 0 in place of n. We are replacing n with 0. So this becomes a to the power 0 plus 1 minus 1 by a minus 1. So this is what? A to the power 1 is a only, a minus 1, this is 1. Okay, so a to the power 1 is a only, so a minus 1 by a minus 1, so it cancels out, and we find that a to the power 0 is 1, which is actually this. So this is our basis function. Why we do it? We want to check that whether it is this function is actually working for a basis value, that is 0. What we checked here also. We placed n equal to 0, and we saw that when n equal to 0, the summation is 0, which we would have already thought to be true, but we need to use a basis function. So basis value is 0, and we applied it here, and we found that okay, this is what we would have wanted. Now induction hypothesis say that we assume it to be true. We assume that a to the power 0 plus a to the power n is actually equal to this. We assume, and now we want it to be true for n plus 1. So what we are going to do? We will replace all n with n plus 1. So this is n plus 1, and where I'll be filling in. So this is a0 plus a1 plus dot 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 a to the power n, and this remains here, and we have added a to the power n plus 1. We have added this also. Actually, it becomes a0 to an, which we already have, and we have shown, or we have actually hypothesized that okay, this is true. Now we have added a n plus 1, and once we add these two parts, we want it to be true like this, not for n but n plus 1. And once we add it, because this can be replaced by this value easily, a0 plus an, that is this only, we assumed it to be true, so we can easily replace it. We replaced it, and we added with an plus a to the power n plus 1, which is there. And once we added it, we found it that it is true for n plus 1 also. See, n plus 1 is there. So this is true for n. Now this one becomes true for n plus 1, and this is how we have showed that is true for, if n is assumed true, n plus 1 will come. And if this is not coming, if for any value n we assume it to be true and it is not coming true, or it is the result is not coming for n plus 1, we say that this is not true, this equation is not true. So this is how we try and implement or use this induction hypothesis to prove certain algorithms. So we have been using weak induction as of now, but strong induction, it also holds, that is show as 0 means replace the value of the variable with 0, and just assume that sk holds for any arbitrary k which is less than or equal to n, and show that as n plus 1 means the next value follows. But there is another variation also. We show it not only for 0 but for 1 also, and we assume Sn and Sn plus 1, both of them are true, and once they are true, we can also show it for Sn plus 2 away ahead. Means first we showed S0, then we assume Sn and we proved that Sn plus 1 is coming. But now here there is another variation of induction. We show S0 and S1 holds. We also assume Sn and Sn plus 1 also they are also true, means they also hold. And we show Sn plus 2 follows. And this is nothing but a variation and equivalent to the strong induction. What about asymptotic performance? What do we mean by asymptotic? This word is very important, because sometimes people would not understand what this asymptotic means. Actually, this asymptotic means the function will be only dealing with an input. Means only the input value we are concerned about. Others we will consider to be constant. This is what we call as asymptotic. And in another version, asymptotic means that you have a curve and you have a line, and they are meeting each other, but they are not touching. This is also a version, means a meaning of asymptotic, but we will deal with the asymptotic version of the meaning, which we assume to be that the function is only dependent or considered to be dependent on some variable x or any letter you can take. But the main thing is the function only depends on the size of this n, but the other components of that function we considered to be running time. Let me give you an example that once you are having no x or no variable in that function, we assume that the function is providing a constant value. Means that function will run in constant time, and because it is not dependent on any value which is increasing or decreasing. So in this course we care most about asymptotic performance. So that is why you need to be well aware that what exactly is this asymptotic performance, and how does the algorithm behave as the problem size gets very large. We are not worried about 10 inputs, 20 inputs, or 100 or 1000 inputs. We are talking about huge inputs. Like if you want to search a name from a dictionary or a database which is worldwide name, say you want to find name as Sam could be hundreds, thousands of Sam can be there in the whole in the complete globe. So once you are trying to find out Sam from the database of names of all people or all individuals with name Sam, that is going to take a huge time. You are searching with the input value is 1, and the range is quite high. So what when you have a large thing which you need to search, right? So as your problem size gets very large, how your function or algorithm is going to run? Is it going to perform well, or what value or in which mathematical term this running type could be ascertained? Then the second thing is memory and storage requirement. So this is our there are two running time. One is this storage time, and then we have algorithm running time, and we'll introduce omega, big omega, and big O notations just now. And the third thing is the bandwidth and the power requirements, the logic gate, etc. These are subsidiary or supporting, but in certain cases your algorithm will be dependent on these values, like the network algorithms or power savvy algorithms or power hungry algorithms, you should say. And if you have a algorithm which is or a program which is running on some employing logic gates every now and then. So these three in the order of precedence, these three will be what we will try to find out in asymptotic performance. So what is asymptotic notation? By now you might have got that feeling, that intuitive feeling for this asymptotic big O notation, and most of you might be knowing this big O notation. And what we mean by this is, what does this order of n, if we just say that this is order of n running time means, or if I say that okay, we have order of n square, order of n log n. So as a computer science person, everyone should know, if I speak that this is order of n square, so you should know what I'm speaking. I'm talking about big O notation, and I'm also trying to suggest that this algorithm, it varies as n square. The running time is n square, n log n. Which one is better? Which one is good? Which one is not good? We are going to see. And how does this asymptotic running time relate to your asymptotic memory usage? We have seen that running time is the first thing which we see. Then also the memory usage. Running time is directly related to memory usage also. So our first task will be to define this notation more formally and completely, because we need to understand, everyone should understand what these notations are. So as this course is on analysis of algorithm, analysis is performed with respect to a computational model. Analysis, how you are going to perform. Well, once you say, okay, you have a result, you analyze it. But how to analyze? On whom to analyze? Then this is performed with respect to a computational model. So we will usually use a generic uniprocessor random access machine that will be clear to you in a short while from now, maybe in later sessions. But we will just use a machine or a computational model. And all memory equally expensive to access, means all memory is equally expensive. We are not saying that this memory is expensive, that memory is not expensive. We consider that okay, everything is expensive. We need to, whenever we want to access, each and every memory is expensive. And there are no concurrent operations. While we analyze our analysis, means when we analyze the algorithm, we consider that there are no concurrent operations, which is not very true in the present scenario where number of operations, concurrent operations are going on, threads are running. Then all reasonable instructions take unit time. So all our reasonable, whichever instruction we use, they are taking unit time. This again is not true, but for the sake of completion of analysis of algorithm, we need to generalize or put in front of you what we think or what we should consider, and you should also be in this line only. But function calls, we'll see how we'll change the unit, this instruction type. Then we have constant word size. If the word size is 8 byte or 16 byte, 32 byte, all words will be of that size only. And if we are explicitly manipulating the bits, then we'll talk about this. The important part is input size. Whenever we deal with an algorithm, we're only interested in input size. So there are two types of complexity. One is running time complexity, one is memory usage complexity. So formally we know them as time and space complexity. Time is running time, space is memory space. So this is generally a function of the input size, which these complexities are. And what complexity means is we are just trying to find out our algorithm is good or bad, is efficient or non-efficient. For example, we have sorting, multiplication, all these will come. So here, how we are going to characterize this input size, which we are talking about. Like if we are onto sorting, the number of input items will be our input size. If we are multiplying that, what are the number of bits, the total number of bits. Then in case of algorithms which are dealing with graphs, we have nodes and edges as the input size, and so on and so forth. So let us introduce first running time. We have already seen, but the number of primitive steps that are executed. Primitive steps, all those steps which are primitive, which are executed while this algorithm starts and it ends or concludes. The number of primitive steps we count and that are executed, we call them as or it as a running time. So except for time of executing a function call, most statements they roughly require the same amount of time. So we will be specifically talking about function call if we have any. This is a line y is equal to mx plus b or c. This is equation of state line, and this is a conversion from Fahrenheit to Celsius and vice versa. And this is just an addition of two functions fx and gy. So this is one line, and we say that same amount of time it takes, and we will be more exact whenever it is required. So once we analyze, we want that our algorithm should be, while we are writing an algorithm, we want that our algorithm should be best. So if we write an algorithm and we analyze it, we can analyze it for the worst case, means the average case, and then there is also a good case, or we call it as a best case. So worst case, and let me tell you that we are actually interested in worst case only. Why? Because we want that our algorithm should be best. It should be efficient and not memory hungry. So worst case, it provides an upper bound on running time. Means if this is a running time, we say this is our upper bound. Say this is our upper bound, and this algorithm, the running time the algorithm is going to take, will never cross this line. So we are trying to provide an upper bound, and we will say, okay, this is the line. Means say n square, n cube. We specify a value and we say, okay, this is the running time. This algorithm in any case, either in worst case, will not cross this line. This is our upper bound. And we absolutely guarantee that. This is our computer science. We are using your computer science skills. We analyze an algorithm and we say, okay, this is not going to go beyond this. And what about average case? This provides the expected running time, not the upper bound. So very useful, but we need to be very careful about it. What is average? What is average means we have a random or equally likely inputs, and then we'll also put real life inputs. But let me assure you that we are not much worried about this average case or best case. We are, concerned about our worst case scenario. So thank you so much. This is our introduction, and we'll be covering algorithm analysis in quite detail in various subsequent coming sessions. Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.